Now, the Ukrainian president says that he wants to start raising funds to buy a fleet of what he called sea drones. Now, Kyiv used sea drones to attack the Russian Black Sea Fleet at the end of October, and according to the Ukrainian military, they hit 3 Russian warships.
These images, taken at the end of October, captured the first attack of its kind. What you're seeing is the view from a Ukrainian sea drone speeding towards its target, Russia's Black Sea Fleet near the Crimean port of Sevastopol. Also known as an unmanned surface vehicle, it comes under fire from the Russian military. There were reportedly between 6 and 8 nautical drones involved in this assault. What remains unclear is the damage caused to Russia's fleet. 3 vessels were reportedly hit. According to naval analyst H.I. Sutton, the small vessel was developed by modifying a jet ski. It has an aluminium hull and possibly Russian-designed fuses that detonate a warhead. It also includes a remote control camera and sends video feedback to Ukraine's command and control centre. In these images, shot earlier in the attack and under the cover of darkness, it's believed the sea drone captures shots of Moscow's flagship, the Admiral Makarov. Experts agree that these sea drones are extremely cost-effective. They're relatively inexpensive, unmanned, and can cause large amounts of damage.
Dominika Kunatova is a senior researcher at the Centre for Security Studies in Zurich, and she joins us now here at DW. We heard in that report that these drones are cheap, but how effective are they?
Good afternoon. Hello. So yeah, the number of these drone boats that are carrying explosives definitely did not disable the Russian Black Sea Fleet in the Bay of Sevastopol, but they did cause some substantial damage, as we have heard, at least 1 minesweeper and 2 other warships, which means that they can create an additional headache for Russian forces. They're going to pin down resources to step up defense of their naval base. But what I consider more interesting about this whole attack is that these drone boats were used in combination with aerial drones. So I see a potential venue for a more innovative use of these uncrewed systems. I can imagine, for instance, using aerial drones as a decoy to clear the path for the drone boats, or vice versa. So definitely an interesting development in the use of uncrewed systems here.
Now, we're hearing that President Zelensky is trying to get money together to buy more of these drones. As the war drags on, both sides facing budgetary pressure, will this presumably necessitate the use of even more of these types of weapons?
Well, exactly. We can see the progression. Like, if you remember, in the early months of the war, there were attempts to deploy these large drones, and especially Ukrainians were able to use them to cause some sensational effects. But this is a conflict in which neither side controls the sky. So these larger drones are vulnerable to air defenses and are expensive to replace. And which means that militaries on both sides kind of discovered these cheaper commercial alternatives to military-grade drones, and they're using drones that are usually available on AliExpress or Amazon for a few $100s, and they use them repurposed to drop grenades, to navigate artillery. They became this crucial capability to improve precision of artillery fires and deploying them in large numbers. This availability of cheaper drones that are user-friendly and are easy to repurpose for military missions are a comfortable way for militaries with lesser resources to replenish their military capabilities.
If I could ask you, it's been reported that Iran has been supplying Russia with drones. Iran today announced it's developed a hypersonic missile that it claims is capable of penetrating all defense systems. Can you tell us a little bit more about this and what it might mean if a missile like this were to be used by Russia?
Well, this whole Iranian story, to me, it signals that Russia doesn't have resources to deploy more sophisticated weapons, and they're buying cheaper drones from Iran. But they managed to cause and frustrate the Ukrainians, especially with the Shahid kamikaze drones, because they deployed them deeper in the Ukrainian territory and in large numbers, and which is difficult to basically capture them all. But with this announcement of hypersonic missile, I call this like a press release weapons, because I don't know if you remember, Russia also claimed to have used hypersonic missile back in March and also in May in Ukraine. And what is striking about this narrative is that both countries, Russia and Iran, they already have like ballistic missiles, and ballistic missiles fly at hypersonic speed. So when they are referring to hypersonic missile as a new missile technology, it's not about the speed, but it's about the ability to change the trajectory of the missile and about the altitude at which they fly. But in case of the Russian launch of Shmyhal in March, that was air-launched ballistic missile, and there were no extraordinary characteristics of this missile. So I mean, with the we don't have much details about what this hypersonic missile might be, and that's only what the Iranian authorities announced. So I would expect either it's more of a type of a glider, or they are attempting to build a new engine to reach these high speeds. But
Ms. Kunatova, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. Our time has run out, but thank you so much for joining us on DW.
Thank you.
Well, for more about drones, let's bring in Arthur Holland-Michel here. He's a researcher on emerging military technologies and author of Eyes in the Sky, a book about aerial drones. Thanks for being with us. Now, we saw the use of unmanned sea drones in that report. Beyond just wreaking havoc, can those drones allow Ukraine to seriously damage Russia's Black Sea fleet?
You know, I'm not actually convinced that moving forward, it's sort of guaranteed that they will cause serious damage. Russia is definitely going to respond to this attack. But that's actually an important point, because they will definitely be a nuisance. They have, in a way, opened up a new front, so to speak, that Russia now has to defend against. Russia's going to have to invest precious new resources to protect its fleet from these drones, doing things like setting up barriers, increasing patrols, and deploying additional defense weapons. This, of course, alone is itself a pretty significant tactical and strategic even effect, even if the drones don't actually end up sinking any ships.
Talk to us about aerial drones. Those are the kinds of drones people are more familiar with. Russia has been deploying so-called kamikaze drones against Ukraine with devastating effects, and both sides are using surveillance drones. What impact have these drones had on the war?
So I think they've had a twofold impact. One is, as you said, that they have caused some pretty significant damage to both sides, either as a result of drones directly attacking targets, or actually very significantly by providing surveillance support for other weapons. I don't necessarily think this compares to the scale of impact and damage from, say, artillery or ground operations. But it has forced both sides, as I mentioned earlier, to have to dedicate really significant and precious resources to counter-drone defense, something that militaries didn't have to do in previous wars. The other impact is, I think, narrative, and this is really significant, and I've talked about this before on this show. Drones are impressive, they're frightening, they're technologically advanced, and I mean, we're talking about them today because they are very good at generating headlines in addition to actually being effective weapons. And both sides have used this aspect of drones to their advantage to kind of shape the narrative of the war. And that, I think, is going to continue to be a really important effect that they will have on the battlefield.
They do have the effect of making people feel vulnerable. That is pretty clear. This is drone warfare that we're seeing on a new scale in this conflict. Could drones be a game changer in the Ukraine war, do you think?
This depends entirely on the number of drones that each side can deploy. What we've learned from recent events is that any drone operation these days is going to require the side to sacrifice many of the drones that they're using, perhaps even a majority. We know that Ukraine has reportedly shot down as many as 70% of the kamikaze drones that Russia has launched in recent weeks. So if Russia doesn't have a huge stockpile of drones on standby or the capacity to build new drones, they're going to run out very fast. Same goes for Ukrainian drone attacks. If you need to sacrifice 9 drones for every single drone that's effective, you don't get these drones back like other weapon systems. And so I think it could be unsustainable. So there really is that big question mark of how big those stockpiles are, what the manufacturing capacity looks like.
Arthur, thank you very much for your insights. That was Arthur Holland-Michel, an expert in drone warfare and surveillance.